I'm Jim Carney.
I'm Linda Hirsch.
And this is EdCast, a program created and produced by educators for everyone interested in education.
Why has bullying become so pervasive in our culture today? What can we do to combat this behavior and stop the cruelty inflicted on so many young people? Join us today for part one of an in-depth discussion about battling bullying with studio guests Mark Weiss, Education Director of Operation Respect, and Rosalind Wiseman, educator and author of Queen Bees and Wannabes.
And later in the program, I'll speak with an educator who specializes in training school counselors on how to deal with bullies, bullying victims, parents, and school staff. But we begin with Linda and her first guest.
My guests today are Mark Weiss, the Education Director of Operation Respect, an organization committed to providing children with a safe learning environment. Later on in the program, I'll speak with Rosalind Wiseman, an internationally known educator on children, teens, and parenting. She is also the author of Queen Bees and Wannabes, a book which was the basis for the movie Mean Girls. Joining me now in the studio is Mark Weiss. Thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure.
Let's begin by defining what bullying is.
Well, interestingly, if you ask people what it is, they tell you things like name-calling and teasing and picking on other people. Kids will say that. But the research, which is important, talks about bullying as being something special that's more virulent than that. And we've used the acronym PAIN, P-A-I-N, to represent an imbalance of power that the aggressor is doing that, the bully, you might say. Aggression, P-A, aggression, aggressive physically or emotionally. The I stands for intentional, that it's being done intentionally. And the N we think of as numerous or repetitive. If you have those aspects, or those characteristics for bullying, then what you should realize is that there's a need for adult intervention. The rest of the things that kind of revolve around it, in our view, should be dealt with through community building, conflict resolution, mediation. But bullying itself really needs an intervention on the part of adults.
Let's talk about how we do that. First, I want to ask you, there's so much media attention paid to bullying now. Is it more pervasive today than it ever was, or is it just that we pay more attention or we have lower tolerance?
Well, there's more attention, and we do know that a statistic that we use is that 160,000 children, young people, stay home from school every day because they're afraid to go to school. So it's whatever that is, that's powerful. We think it's possibly diminished, but I like to say war is diminished also, but it doesn't mean we don't need to work on it. So it's something that's there that we want to prevent, that sets a horrible tone around school climate and in schools. So we want to work on it in a broad way, and then to the person who's being targeted, it's devastating.
So
we need to do something.
Tell us a little about your own background and what got you interested in this kind of work.
Well, I'm an educator in the New York City school system. I was for 34 years, and I was a principal for more than 20 years. I started the first alternative school in the Bronx Regional High School. I started another school in Manhattan, but all the while my passion was to create a place a school where we cared about kids. And so I've been doing that all my career, and then 10 years ago I actually, I guess you'd say, retired, although I haven't stopped working at all, and I met Peter Yarrow from Peter, Paul and Mary, and Peter had just recently heard a song called Don't Laugh at Me, written by Steve Seskin. And he and Peter, Paul and Mary sang that song for 6,000 school principals. And the chorus goes, We're
going to listen to that song in just a minute,
okay.
So let's hold on just for 1 second and just get to Operation Respect.
Exactly.
Tell us a little about what Operation Respect is.
Peter realized when he actually sang it to those principals that they loved the song, but they said, give us a curriculum or something to go with it. We need more than that. So he created a project with a teacher guide and music, and we've taken that all over the world in the last 10 years and all over the United States. We think we're in about 22,000 schools. Luckily, our curriculum is free of charge.
I've noticed that.
It's offered on the internet, and McGraw-Hill, a wonderful company, has agreed to mail it to anyone who asks for it, along with a DVD. And the website is operationrespect.org. So
I'll give that information about how people can obtain that. Going back to when you were a principal, were you witness Was there a lot of bullying when you were a principal, or were you not as aware of it then? Were we not aware?
Bullying's hard to see. Bullies don't necessarily come out in the open and start and do what they do. So you need to have your ear to the ground, and you need to let the school community know that you care about about it. That is not just you, the principal, but everybody in the school really should be on board.
That's a lesson for us that we may not know. We may think we're aware of what's happening around us, but we may not really know.
I thought when I first became a principal, I was Superman.
And that you knew everything, you're right, and that you
But I
really
realized-
don't. People, there are many targets of bullies. Are there certain groups that are targeted more than others? What's your take on that?
You know what?
Who are the targets?
What's interesting is that the targets are usually auditioned by the bullies. So you don't know who you are. They'll go around and try what they're doing on different young people, on different kids. And if it sticks and it feels like, gee, this is fun, let's do this more to this particular kid, then or somebody will make a decision that that's the targeted person. So it's not a predictable thing, and we like to use target instead of victim, because victim would, I think, would label the child to feel like a victim. And we want to take the action away from the label. And so we use aggressor to be bully, and even though it's hard not to use bully and victim, but in any event, that's, bullies just kind of pick and choose who they're going to go after. And I don't think it's necessarily any one kind of person.
There have been a lot of teen suicides lately, obviously, and that is among many children, adolescents, teens in the gay community.
Yes.
Do we see more, are they more frequently the targets, or are they more vulnerable?
The most common way that bullying is done is by appearance. That's the top one. But the next one, and that would be like you have big ears or your glasses or the way you look or whatever. But the next one from that is LGBT youth, and they're targeted the most, and it seems to be that the use of the word gay becomes an epithet, and so it's very serious, and not to forget that it's hard for a kid to go home who's trying to figure out what's going on in their lives. If they are struggling with LGBT issues, you can't go home to your parents. Think about any other bullying. Somebody says you're black, or somebody says uses your ethnic background, or whatever they might do. You could still go home to your parents and say something's happening with me. But with LGBT youth, we need to be there for them even more.
Do you think there's something in our culture that is fostering bullying, the kind of America we are today?
Yeah.
Is there something about us that is fostering or making people feel they can do it?
Imagine sitting home and laughing at situation comedies. I mean, when we laughed at I Love Lucy, it was about Lucy or Desi. But when you laugh now, it seems to be much more about making fun of somebody else.
So that laughing, that brings us back to don't laugh at me, and that idea that people laugh at people because they're different. Tell us a little about the song. We're going to look at the video now. Who wrote the song, and what are we going to be looking at?
Great. Peter Yarrow found that song at the Kerrville Folk Festival with his daughter. Steve Seskin wrote the song with Alan Shamblin, and Alan's daughter came home, I guess it's 15 years ago. It became a big country hit, and Steve is a country songwriter. His daughter was complaining about school and said, the kids are laughing at me. And as he tells it, he had his arm around his daughter, and then he's writing with his other hand. Because I'm a songwriter, he's writing down, don't laugh at me, don't call me names, don't get your pleasure from my pain.
Let's take a look.
You got it.
I'm a little boy with glasses, the one they call a geek. A little girl who never smiles, 'cause I got braces on my teeth. And I know how it feels to cry myself to sleep. I'm that kid on every playground who's always chosen last. A single teenage mother trying to overcome my past. You don't have to be my friend, but is it too much to ask? Don't laugh at me, don't call me names, don't get your pleasure from my pain. In God's eyes, we're all the same. Someday we'll all have perfect wings. Don't laugh at me.
That was a very moving video, I found, and so it really is very effective, I think, and shows you, just makes you feel what it's like to be different and why we should not, the reasons why we should be sensitive to all of those things. You know, in the olden days, my olden days, and even today, people always say, well, you know what, if you're bullied, you know, the best thing to do is to stand up to a bully. And they won't pick on you once you stand up to a bully. What do you think of that advice?
Well, we'd love to teach resilience and strength and what we call assertiveness
Not
instead
like
of
fighting back or if it's
well, we
physical?
don't encourage aggressive behavior, but we try to make a distinction between aggressive, assertive, and submissive, those three. And we try to teach people, and do this ourselves, assertiveness. How do you stand up for yourself? However, we're also learning that there's a group of people called bystanders that are a huge group, and that they can be really significant players in this. They're not just, they're watching, but they're listening and they're feeling. And they might want to change things. So
Jim Carney had the opportunity to speak with an educator who trains counselors. So let's take a look at that video.
Okay.
Dr. Stuart Chen-Hayes is Program Coordinator and Associate Professor of Counselor Education and School Counseling at Lehman College. He essentially trains the counselors who are on the front lines at New York City schools. Tell me a little bit about the school counseling program and the training for counselors that you have here.
Well, I teach and I coordinate the counselor education school counseling program. And for many people in New York City, they're still using the old, outdated word guidance, and that's not what we do. We teach professional school counselors how to give away academic, career, college, and personal social competencies to all students K through 12. And so part of within our mission is to make sure that we are assisting students to make sure that they're career and college ready, make sure they have the academic skills that they need, and to make sure that they have personal and social competencies. And so the issue of bullying can certainly stop students from achieving. It can stop them from achieving their career and college goals, and it can certainly really challenge them in terms of emotional and mental health issues in terms of personal social. So we tend to look at the whole child or adolescent with all those issues.
Different people have different definitions for the term bullying. Is there a definition for bullying?
Well, there are multiple definitions of bullying. Any unwanted emotional, physical, it can be sexual, inappropriate uses of power and or control that cause harm to another person is like the global that I would use. And that can be done in person, that can be done in cyberspace, that can be done by setting things up so other people do certain things. It has many, many permutations.
Structurally, just for background, how is the counseling set up in the Department of Education and middle and high school?
Well, around the country, what we recommend, the American School Counselor Association, the American Counseling Association, is a 250 to 1 school counselor, 250 students to 1 school counselor ratio. And sadly right now, there are only 4 or 5 states that meet that. And New York is way beyond that. We're up, I think we're at 470 to 1. Part of that is because New York State doesn't mandate elementary school counselors. And school counseling is very focused on human development. And the issue is that we have bullying issues K through 12, but what we really need is to have school counselors mandated in every elementary school in the state so we can lessen that high ratio of students to school counselors and really provide good academic, career college, and personal social, including anti-bullying services. And so we still have schools, sadly, where there's school counselors doing discipline, crisis, and paperwork instead of focusing on giving away academic, career college, and personal social competencies. So our recommendation to every principal, to every school counselor out there is stop doing all the extra crisis, stop doing the babysitting, stop doing the paperwork, stop doing all the things that you don't need a master's degree in school counseling for, and shift to what we call evidence-based to research-based practice, which is giving away the best curricula in terms of academic, career college, and personal social competencies. And so the specific with how to get to bullying is that the evidence and research-based practice are very clear that we need to work on helping all students figure out, are they more likely to be in bully mode, in victim mode, or a bystander mode? And we need to teach those 3.
How do teachers and counselors recognize that there's a bullying problem with a particular student or in a school?
School counselors and teachers, it really depends on their training and their level of awareness. Have been trained in it, they can pick it up right away. Well, one of the things we do is we teach our students to look at data. What is the data with who is being referred for behavioral issues? What's the data in terms of who is coming up repeatedly with being accused of bullying. And then looking at that, we talk about disaggregating the data, pulling it apart. Right now, every public school principal, every teacher has to disaggregate the data and look at, are we being effective in terms of, what are the gaps around gender? Are boys doing better or girls? What are the gaps in terms of ethnicity and race? What's going on for Latinos? What's going on for folks of African descent? For Asians, for white folks, for multiracial folks? What's going on for students with intellectual, physical, emotional, developmental disabilities, for folks who are gifted and talented? And then really looking at what are the patterns within groups, and what then can we make in terms of interventions with whole groups to really challenge bullying. We have to teach not only students what it's like around for the victim, but what it's like for the bully, but most importantly for the bystander, and shifting bystanders into being what we call upstanders. And the idea behind that is that bullying doesn't just hurt the victim, it hurts everybody around. Because oftentimes students think, oh gosh, I really want to be friends with the bully, I want to be in the in crowd, so I'm not going to do it, I'm going to stand up. But you never know when the bully's going to turn on one of their allies. And so the issue is everybody needs to know what bullying behavior is, everyone needs to know what happens for the victims, and then what we do to strengthen victims. And one of the biggest systemic issues is teaching bystanders to become upstanders, to stand up, to speak up. And so the excitement about this is it's no longer an individual interventions, it's systemic and it's whole school. And that's what we need. When we have those school cancer ratios to student that are that high, the things that we need to do are looking at creating school climates and cultures that really support all students, all adults, in terms of, all right, this is what bullying is, and this is what we need to do. And so one of the things that we do is we do a lot of work around role plays with our school counselors prior to getting into the practicum and internship. And the role plays that we tend to do are the toughest things that we can find. So role plays include suicidal ideation, homicidal ideation, bullying, every difficult thing that you could think of, so that when our school candidates get out in the schools, nothing phases them, nothing surprises them.
Any final thoughts on the whole issue of bullying and how it affects kids and families and society as a whole?
I think that the most powerful thing that adults can do is listen to the memories of what it was like for them coming up as a child or adolescent. Every one of us has been the target of bullying. I've never met an adult who hasn't had one experience of being bullied or teased. We've all got that. It's all somewhere in there. We need to notice that, remember it, and then think about how we felt back as a child or adolescent. And remember, were there adults who cared, who intervened, who did something, or are we completely on our own and no one said or did a word? It's similar to racism will end when white people care about ending it as much as people of color. Sexism will end when those of us who are men and boys care about ending it as much as women and girls. Bullying and violence will end when the perpetrators of violence care as much about it because they start to do their healing work as the folks who are being bullied.
For more academic information and resources on bullying, visit Dr. Chen-Hayes' website by Googling the term Digication Chen-Hayes, or visit www.olweus.org. And now, back to Linda in the studio.
So what did you think of?
I loved, Jim, his name is Jim, yes?
Jim Carney was
yeah,
the
he talked
interviewer.
about upstanders.
Oh.
And I love the distinction from bystanders to upstanders, and I really do think we have to, I hope that becomes a word in the dictionary. I know there are some words that have, that enter the dictionary year by year. This one, I think, might be there in our lifetime. And it doesn't just mean that you have to confront the bully. It could mean that you befriend the person who's being picked on. That's good enough.
It's hard to do.
Well,
hard to do with peer pressure, but I understand.
Yeah.
I want to thank you so much for joining us for part one of this interview. We will continue this interview in our second part because this is such a big topic. So thank you so much for joining us today, and I look forward to continuing this conversation.
Thank you.
When we come back, I'm going to be speaking with Rosalind Wiseman, the author of Queen Bees and Wannabes. So don't go away. Thank you. I'm speaking with Rosalind Wiseman. Thank you so much for joining us. Tell us a little bit about how you got involved in the area of bullying.
Sure. I've been a teacher for a long time, creating curricula on ethical leadership, bullying prevention, and media literacy, working with kids from about the age of 4th grade until 12th grade and some college. So I've been in this line of work for quite a while.
Your book, Queen Bees and Wannabes, has really become a kind of cultural reference point. Can you tell us what prompted you to write this book?
Sure. I wrote Queen Bees and Wannabes because I'd been teaching for about 8 years, and I was teaching girls in private and public schools and hospitals and alternative schools. And it was really clear to me that parents needed a guide a guide for themselves to navigate girl world. And I wanted to be able to be a bridge between what the girls were experiencing and what they were telling me, and what I thought would be helpful for parents and people who care about girls, what they needed to know. So I wrote down everything that I thought the world looked like to a girl, and what the implications were also, and what we could do about it when girls had challenges, social challenges, conflicts, abuses of power in relationships with other girls, with adults, with boys, and what adults could do to be sanely involved in their daughters' lives or in the girls that they cared about lives. And that was the foundation.
Are there gender differences in terms of bullying, in terms of the victim and the perpetrator?
Well, it's you can argue this in many, many different ways. And right now, I'm actually writing a book for boys with boys, and I'm writing a book for parents, and a book for boys between 10 and 14, and a book for boys between 14 and 18. And boys are helping me with every step of this. You know, it's easy to say that there are very strong differences between the way in which girls are aggressive and the way that boys are aggressive. And I just don't think it's that way. And I don't think it's ever, frankly, been that way. I think that boys have groups, and you don't call them cliques because boys won't like that, but and they might not be as complicated, but the messages and the power dynamics within the group are the same, which is that when the person who has the most power abuses it, most people do nothing or they capitulate to the power. And that's what girls do too, and that's what we all do. It's one of the things, doesn't make it right. It actually is something we have to confront, but I think that it might look different, but I think the messages are the same.
Do you think there's something that our culture does that foments bullying?
Oh, sure, absolutely.
Like what?
We're not great in this country. Well, let me say to you in a different way, in a more positive way. We're really, really good at knowing what our rights are in the United States. We are not so good about being as clear on our responsibilities to each other. And that is something that I think is absolutely clear when you see it in bullying, because what we have is people who are demanding that they be treated with dignity or with respect, but do not treat other people that way. And parents are very focused. Unfortunately, there's a sort of enough of the culture saying to parents, you need to protect your child, but there's not enough coming to parents saying, but your child also exists with other people, and that conflicts are inevitable, and that your child needs to navigate those conflicts with dignity, treating other people with dignity, not just it's all about you. I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we've got.
I think that's a really interesting distinction. I know you wrote a book called Queen Bee Moms and Kingpin Dads, and so you feel that parents really play a role in this by the example that they set and by their own expectations as adults. I mean, we're a pretty demanding society for ourselves. Give me, I want. Does
Sure,
this affect
absolutely.
our kids, do you think?
Yeah, I think this whole mama bear thing is a great soundbite, but I think it's totally irresponsible parenting. And it's ridiculous because you're not self-reflective. You don't think about how you should comport yourself when you go running off the rails to somebody else screaming. It's as if we think that because we're parents, we have a higher calling when we perceive that our child is being threatened, that we get to do whatever we want to right that wrong. And that includes bullying other people. So you mess with my kid, you mess with me. Well, honestly, I'm a parent and I've been a teacher for a long time. And if you let that guide your parenting, then what your child realizes is that you believe that you have the right to have self-righteous temper tantrums whenever you want, without actually knowing the full story of things. I think our culture would be a lot better off if people actually stood still and figured out how they're going to comport themselves before they start running off the rails.
This is excellent advice. Now, is there a point when parents should intercede on behalf of their children when they feel they're a victim? And what should they do to be effective?
Sure. I think what's important is that you can be involved in your child's life, but be behind the scenes for the most part. And, when parents say, well, what do I do when a kid comes to me with my child comes to me with a problem, is I say, you don't freak out, because actually, besides the stuff I just talked about philosophically, there is nothing, especially for boys, that will stop them from ever talking to you again, is if you freak out when they come and tell you about a problem. So when a kid comes to you, you say, oh my gosh, I'm really sorry that happened to you. Thank you for telling me. And together we're going to figure this out. We're going to think it through. And I think that that's you're also teaching social competency in those moments. It's not just, oh my gosh, you're being bullied. This is horrible. Oh my gosh. But at the same, so I really understand that parents get really nervous. But you just got to figure out how to be sanely involved. And if the pattern gets worse, or if the child can't function in school, then you can become more visibly involved.
Thank you so much. Your advice sounds excellent. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Absolutely.
Welcome back to this edition of Ed Bites.
Here's some good news about teen smoking. Education Week reports that smoking amongst 8th, 10th, and 12th graders is at an all-time low. But the news is not that simple. It seems that instead of cigarettes, teens are more likely to light up a joint. Marijuana use has been rising, and 1 in 9 high school seniors has tried synthetic marijuana. Is pot a better alternative than cigarettes, or is this an even more alarming trend? Tell us what you think.
The College Board reports a slowing down in the pace of the attainment of college degrees. At the current rate, the completion rate for college degrees will be just 46% by 2025, far below the target of 55% set by a College Board Commission and others. At 49.4%, New York is one of the states with the highest completion rates. To raise these rates, a College Board Commission recommends improving middle school and high school college counseling, simplifying the college admissions process, and better aligning high school standards and college expectations.
The Teaching Now blog reports that gum chewing might improve memory. College students who chewed gum before taking a test showed improved memory function and performed better than their non-gum chewing counterparts. The theory is that chewing improves blood flow in the brain. There were some caveats. The effect only lasted for 15 to 20 minutes after the gum was chewed, and chewing for too long, such as through the entire exam, negated the benefits. More research is needed.
Finland has the highest performing education system in the world. How does Finland do it? Among their approaches is improved teacher recruitment and professional development, a high-quality curriculum with vocational options, and an emphasis on play and the arts. Government leaders and educators also downplay standardized testing. We'll be taking a more in-depth look at education in Finland in a future EdCast.
That does it for this edition of EdCast. Be sure to join us next time as we continue our discussion of bullying.
We leave you with Peter Yarrow singing "Don't Laugh at Me."
Until next time, class dismissed.
You've passed me on the street, and I wouldn't be out here begging if I had enough to eat. And don't think I don't notice that our eyes never meet. Well, don't laugh at me, don't call me names, don't get your pleasure from my pain. In God's eyes, we're all the same. Someday we'll all have perfect wings. Don't laugh at me. I'm fat, I'm thin, I'm short, I'm tall, I'm deaf,